I guess Tom isn't on yet, but we are definitely meeting at Beck's on Wednesday. I'm asking.
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
I can't be there, so
I'll cancel the room at Farm Credit. Of all the days for the whole week, Farm Credit had both of their meeting rooms booked for during the morning. I can only get it at 3 o'clock. And we're worried about Al driving at night, so that's why we went to Beck's. But you're going to be driving early in the morning, get to Beck's anyway.
Yeah.
morning, Tom.
Morning, Tom.
You're muted. There you go.
Wish we could say that more often, right?
Right. It's a dream come true, Kevin. Taj will be joining us, Rick, by telephone.
Okay.
And on another thing before we get into the heart of the matter, let me see here. I have Al's, and then Kevin, do I have your McAllister's meal?
No. Were we supposed to turn that in?
Yes, by Friday.
This past Friday?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's still time, and you will be fed.
They had to kill the teeth by then.
Are we going to McAllister's, or are they going to deliver it to Beck's?
They're delivering it to Beck's, or if I have to use DoorDash or something, we'll use that. But I emailed it with a menu, and so I just need.
Yeah, I got the menu. I didn't know we were supposed to order. Okay, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
One little housekeeping thing. My last name is Lund, not La.
I'll correct it in future communication. Forgive me for my sloppiness.
No, it's done a lot, so don't feel bad.
I'll try to correct it. No, I will correct it.
The way it sounds is it's going to be rain on Wednesday or Tuesday night.
That's a relief. We can go ahead and get started. It's 8 o'clock, if you don't mind. Rick, can I beseech you to put up Al's most recent update, and then I'll see. We need Rick Hyatt, and we'll be good.
No problem.
I tell you what I'll do here is I'll mute myself and I'll call Rick Hyatt.
Tell him it's time to get up.
Would have been nice for him just to invite us out there to Denver or Colorado Springs at his hotel.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking.
They do have a nice little hotel out there. Had a couple meetings there in the past.
He said he's trying to get on.
I had some concerns of sitting by a window seat here recently.
Don't blame you a bit. Or put another way, it makes you be willing to put a seatbelt on, even when you don't have to have a seatbelt on.
Good thing they were only at 16,000. That would have happened at over 30,000. That would have been bad.
Yeah, that would have been very bad.
But even at 16,000, you were sitting by that open hole. Yowzer, that wouldn't, that'd get your attention real quick.
Yeah. Can you imagine sitting there and having phones fly out of your hand and go into the great beyond?
Or just looking out your new full view window. And it was a new plane. It was, I think it just got put in service in October.
That kid will have a story the rest of his life.
True.
Kid and mom. Just to give everybody a quick recap of where we stand on Wednesday's meeting. We're ordering food for carry-in lunch. The meeting starts at 10:30. We're having a working lunch. I think I said at 11:30. 11:30 or 12, I can't remember. Matt and Susan have communicated with me back and forth over the last week, pretty slightly, but ever so little. They seem to be good. They're coming back from Chicago on Tuesday. We hope they make it to Carbondale. We'll see them at 10:30. As soon as we get the documents that we're working on today and the agenda finalized, I will send to them this morning.
Do you know what room, Tom? There at Beck's?
That's a great question, Kevin. I don't know. Let me text Susan and I will find out.
It's a large place, but it's not that big. I imagine just walk into the reception area there. I don't know. I think there's a Hutsy maybe that was a SIU grad that may work there. That might have been her connection there.
Hey, Tom, was there any interest from anyone to do a Zoom? Because I've got a 10 a.m. meeting scheduled and I probably won't be available till 1. If you needed me to even join via Zoom, or if anyone else needed to join via Zoom, I mean, I could start the Zoom call before I go to my appointment and just let it run so people could log in. It's totally up to you. I don't know what you've heard from other people.
I'm intentionally keeping this meeting as small as we can. Paul Merriman on our last call did indicate that he was interested. I haven't really exposed it to a whole bunch of other people. So long story short, I think you should start it before you leave. We'll have Paul dial in.
I was thinking Webb was going to be coming in on Zoom.
Webb is invited physically to the meeting, and as far as I know, he'll be there physically.
Oh, Greg's going to be there. Okay.
Okay, well, I'll start it. I'll start it right before I leave, which might be 9:45 to 20 to 10, something like that. And I'll just let it run for, I mean, it'll just keep running until I shut it off when I get back. So
Can I forward that on to why don't you do it this way? Why don't you invite Paul and then send out the link so that if anybody comes to me in the next day and wants to join in, I can get them in.
okay, I'll do that today. Would it be okay if Chuck wanted to join from Zoom also?
Given the fact that we're talking about architectural drawings, yes.
Okay, all right. So then I can send it to Paul and to Chuck then.
Yeah, 10-4.
Okay, all right. All right,
Will that be via somebody's iPad or will it be the AV people there at Bex?
yeah, I don't know how you're gonna connect from Bex. You gotta have somebody there to connect.
Susan Graham, how does this play into it? Susan said, send her, I'll deal with you and I'll call you on this in a little while, after our call here. But Susan communicated something about a Zoom link. So maybe she's doing it on her laptop. I'm a little in the dark on that piece of it.
Well, maybe it would be best if I create the Zoom link after, and then she could just connect from whatever she's bringing to our Zoom link, and then that way everybody else can too, and then that might work the smoothest.
I'm up for whatever. I'm kind of on the fringe on this discussion. I just want it to work for everybody. So
right.
I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Okay.
Of what she sent me. I haven't had time to digest it yet.
Okay.
I can bring my iPad too, as far as that goes, if that'll be helpful.
I think they got the AV equipment there at Bex in their meeting room. I think we had it there at Farm Credit. I knew that. That's why I wasn't worried there. But at Bex, I think they do have the equipment there.
Okay. I'm emailing Susan Graham now, and I'm going to find out what room it is. And I'll see what she wants to do about that one. If you guys want to go ahead and get started on the language of this, we'll keep moving.
Morning, Rick.
Good morning.
Morning, Rick.
How you doing, guys?
You sound lively.
Up this morning, Rick.
Well, we got in about 3 o'clock this morning. We were caught up in the cancellation of flights because of the window that blew out in the jet, and the conveyor belt for the baggage quit at Denver, and we were 2.5 hours just checking in our bag. So we luckily got a new flight. I'm trying to figure out why my screen here is so damn little. I don't know what I've done. I may have to leave and come back in. I can't figure out what the hell is going on here. But anyway, I'm here. And the other thing is, when I work from my laptop, where the invite came was to my old email, and it doesn't work from home. So,
Rick, what is your new email? I've seen 2 emails in the system. Which is your correct one?
Well, Rick at Hyatt Land, that's where I get anything anywhere. The other one is just an old one I've had forever, and I don't give it up. I just can't figure out why this is so narrow.
Well, I'm sharing the screen. Does that matter?
No, I've had it in full view before. It's just I just got to figure it out. But I can hear you.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Maybe before we really get started, how about if I just give everybody kind of an overview of what I did and why I went about this the way I did. And then, and then we can go from there.
Terrific. Roll with it.
Essentially what I did is I organized this as a draft document so that we can identify specific areas of concern and areas that we had questions about, and things that we would want to have included in a lease. And certainly there's probably some things that I've left out, and I tried to incorporate everybody's comments and all that. But basically after some of the additions and changes, we're looking at a document that should develop into a triple net lease, and all of the things that kind of go along with that. So in the actual parties, I hope you got along with my abbreviations, but rather than write all that out all the time, just made it simpler to identify those as abbreviations as it went through. Otherwise, the whole thing gets pretty lengthy. So again, I didn't do this to say everything was set in stone. We just needed some place to start, and that may be the case even when our discussions, evolve tomorrow. Is that we're getting to a place where we need some place to start, and it sounds like they have nothing, and so they kind of left us to create it. So anyway, that was my impetus for putting this together kind of the way it is. That's why it's organized the way it is. And I've had to work with term sheets similar to this before, so I sort of copied some of those types of things and try to utilize as much of that as possible. So that's kind of the why and the wherefore of all this, and why it looks like the way it does.
I thought, Al, you did an amazing job, and I thought it really got kind of launched the conversation in really a solid way. So from my point of view, I'm really appreciative of all the hard work you put into this, and I think it's a damn good place to start. You want to, since you wrote it, do you want to just kind of go through these and then
Sure.
open it up to the floor for discusussion?
Yep.
However you think it works best. This is new ground to me.
So, anybody jump in. I'll try and make some notes here if we need to make some changes as we go along. But by identifying the parties, we've got the university as SIU, and then we also have the SIU Foundation, and they're two distinct, different entities, and we need to identify those as such. And then the Beta Alpha Alumni Association is BA, and the chapter then, and again, in order to differentiate that, I just called it strictly AGR. And I thought it best in the beginning is just to identify some of the very basic things about what we were going to do and why we were doing it. And at least initially in our discussion, we talked about constructing a 24-man house at 116 small group housing, which I don't know, they may identify it as Schumann Hall. I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's still 116. What I said in terms of terms, this would be to begin, as they talked about beginning our fundraising, was kicking this off at Founders Day, but to try and get something effective before that, some type of document that at least we know that our fundraising is going towards a specific project, and we know a lot of the details about that. I'm afraid if we don't, the questions that we're going to get on the fundraising side, you can't answer them if you don't know specifically what we're doing or what we want to accomplish. I thought it was important to put a date in there that SIU begins to demolish the old building, and it has to have a completion date. And again, as we've run into this before, if we don't give them timelines of things, too many times it just gets pushed back. But if we want to try and get this house so that it's finished and livable for the 25 year, there's a lot of these things are going to have to really move along. Otherwise, it's going to be 26, and it may be 26. But again, I was trying to keep this moving, so that's why I put those dates in there. Also, we talked about a 99-year lease, and Rick had suggested an option to renew that for an additional term. And that's why I highlighted that in yellow. You know, that I didn't say specifically another 99-year lease. You know, I don't know. You know, none of us are going to know at that point whether or not the house is in the condition that it could be renewed for another 99, but certainly we need to have the option to do that. The comprehensive agreement is a new lease agreement between our Alumni Association and SIU. As my understanding is, when the funds are raised by the foundation cannot own the building. It has to be given, that building then is given back to the university, and then we would lease the building back and the land back from the university. So, and I know that there's been, at least in some emails, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that, because the foundation's really only function in all of this is to raise the funds, hold the money, disperse the funds while the building is being built, and then once it's done, that building is then given to the university. And I know this has happened with, I've worked with some other foundations that do exactly the same thing. They can't really own the real estate. They're the way foundations function, they can't do that, but they can raise the funds and then disperse the funds that are needed for a project. Some of the stipulations in all of this, and this goes to triple net lease, that Alumni Association will pay any property taxes if there are any. And again, I don't know enough about it, Illinois law. I don't know whether there'll even be any property taxes. I would think not, but who knows?
I did look up the from the assessors, and that parcel of land has a parcel number, and it includes all of Greek Row, 71.38 acres, and it's listed as property class tax exempt. Owner SIU, Southern Illinois University.
Okay, well, good. So that way there shouldn't be any. In that case, again, with the triple net lease, I stuck this note in here that any equipment or anything like that, originally I said would be the responsibility of SIU to own and maintain, but based on some of you guys' comments, if we do a triple net lease, that really becomes our responsibility, not necessarily the university. So the building and the facilities, everything about it becomes our responsibility to own and maintain.
Al,
which means, yes.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
You're discussing the triple net lease. Does that need to be notated here, in here to spell it out?
I probably at some point it does, but in some other documents that I have, it's never really it's never really noted that it is a triple net lease. It just is noted that the leasee is the one that's actually paying for utilities, insurance, taxes, yada, 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 which essentially amounts to a triple net lease.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I don't know. That's probably a legal question. That's beyond me, I guess, at this point. But I think that's probably something that whatever lawyer we, get involved in this, they'll probably, come up with the correct language for all of that.
Thank you.
Also, in that our utilities would all be metered. I don't think we don't really have much of a choice. I think that our utilities are going to have to be hooked up to SIU, and that seems to me to be the most direct, the most practical way to do that. They can be metered; that's not a problem. And occupying the facility year round. Again, I think that makes the most sense.
Question for you, Al. This is Kevin.
Yes.
Article C in there. HVAC, that would be attached. Plumbing, I would assume bathrooms, that would be attached. What about kitchen equipment, stoves, refrigerators, especially stoves if it's gas? Is that permanently attached or is that
No, that
equipment?
would be really loose equipment. That would be
Okay.
yeah. Unless it's bolted down, it's all loose. So, and I would think that would be something we would want to do anyway, in deciding what we actually want in there, and how we want to arrange that kitchen. So,
Okay.
as far as lease payments go, at this point, we don't know what the building is, and I know this is kind of a crapshoot. And I was trying to think on what really kind of language to use here, but we had to come up with. I thought we had to come up with something, and certainly our goal would be our lease payments wouldn't be more than SIU housing minus a meal contract, but again, I don't. I sort of pulled that statement out of my butt. So, it's not, I just think that we've got to be competitive in whatever it is we have. And if we're not competitive, we're not going to get anybody to live there either. So, but I think that's open-ended enough that does give us some flexibility. And at this point, I think it's premature to even say what that is. But I think we needed to at least make some kind of a statement about it. The Alumni Association is going to be responsible for collecting all of our lease payments from the actives. And as Rick suggested, that we're actually going to lease the building and the grounds and everything for $10 a year. And I don't know, can you scroll up just a little bit? Rick, there we go. Thanks. And that was Rick's suggestion. I didn't have a suggestion, any of that. I was hoping somebody else would throw something out. So, I guess we'll just throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. And the other statement was any repair or maintenance, if we have SIU do it, we'll reimburse them on a case-by-case basis. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to have them do it. I just think that if we do, we need to let them know that they will be reimbursed, not as a regular thing, but only on a case-by-case basis. But I think what all of this is going to mean, there's going to be, we lease this building, the Alumni Association is going to have a lot more work to do. And I hope everybody realizes that, because we're going to be responsible for a lot of things that we aren't now. So it's going to take a commitment to make sure that we get things done as we should, in order to maintain that house on an annual basis.
Are you suggesting, Al, that Alumni Association would kind of arbitrarily have to have a rainy day fund available for unexpected repairs?
Absolutely. And that, as we get lease payments from the active chapter, and that's why I made that comment at the last meeting, is that we've got to collect in advance, not in arrears, because we really don't know what may come up, and we need to be ready to handle something. And when it does, be it a roof, be it, whatever it may be. So we do need to have a rainy day fund certainly readily available.
And fortunately, with the new house, it's going to be less up front and more problematic later, but you still have to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right, Rick. As far as housing requirements go, and this is something we don't really know. I think that we've got to figure out something with the university to allow freshmen to live in that house. And they talked about some clarity or changing some of the rules, so the housing rules were similar to married student housing. I don't know what those rules are. I'm not sure what all that means. But the other part of me is, of course, when I lived in that house, there was no alcohol in that house at all. We went someplace else if there was going to be any alcohol served. I know some of that has changed, but I also, there's one part of me that says I really don't want that house to be a tavern either. So there's going to have to be some compromise on both our part and the university in order to make this function really like we all want it to. So in the end of the day, not everybody may be happy, but I think we need to do that. Whatever we do, we need to do in the best interest of everything in the long term.
What are the rules like in Thompson Point currently? Do we know that? Farmhouse was out there on the floor at one time. What were the rules for them, or what's the rules in student housing currently when it comes to alcohol?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't have any idea.
I don't either. I think they were allowed to have some beer. I don't think they could have hard alcohol. But I really shouldn't say. I don't know yet. We just have to ask.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm hoping that we'll get some clarity about, at least in the beginning discussions on Wednesday. As far as the house mother goes, I think it's important we have a house mother. And I think we need to be in the position of hiring that person. Initially I had in there that it'd be a university employee, we'd reimburse. I know Rick thought that we need to take care of that. I'm fine with that. I just know that we need to have a house mother. So it definitely does make a difference in the tone in the whole house. As far as a kitchen and meal plan, and again, my thoughts are back in the day when I lived in that house, and we ran a meal plan. The active chapter ran the meal plan, bought all the supplies. The chapter hired the cooks. Actually, we had several cooks. And they did all that collecting and took care of the inventory and kept the kitchen clean and everything else. So to me, I think that's great experience for young college guys, because it was great experience for me. Even though I wasn't house manager, I was treasurer, and I know we all experienced lots of different things, whether we liked the meals, whether we even had raccoon one night. I don't know, maybe some of you guys don't know that. We had raccoon or lamb burgers that night. It was an interesting choice. But at any rate, we ate better than I think anybody out on Greek Row in those days. But we bought our own meat. Typically, we bought cull cows or whatever from the farms, and pigs. We always had meat to eat that a lot of the other houses did not. But I think that can be done. That's a great experience, a learning tool for the guys in the active chapter.
Culinary people right now are a lot different than what they were back then, Al. I'm involved with a nursing home and trying to get, well, you call them dietary managers, you don't call them cooks. They are harder to find than hen's teeth. That will be a big stumbling block to find a cook, at least in the Effingham area. Maybe it's different in Carbondale, but cooks are extremely hard to get right now and to retain.
Well, that may be so. Again, I know that'll be a challenge. It'll be a challenge hiring anybody anymore. But we got to start someplace, I guess. I think if we're going to have a commercial kitchen, you about have to have somebody running it. And you just can't
Agreed.
turn it loose and say, well, everybody can fix their own. Nah, that doesn't work. So as far as insurance goes, again, this is part of the triple net. We would be responsible. Alumni Association is responsible for the insurance on the building, with SIU as the loss payee. We're also responsibility on all the contents and loose equipment, but not individual active chapter possessions. They're going to be responsible for their own. As far as cleaning and maintenance, the active chapter will be responsible for cleaning all the house, except the house mother's quarters, and that we probably, as Alumni Association, need to make sure that we work with the exterminator on a periodic basis to go through there and make sure that I know when I lived in a house, we had exterminators that the university sent through at least once a year, maybe more than that. And that's something that we really need to do. And I think the alumni need to make sure that all the repairs are done, probably in the summertime. I mean, sometime when there's not as many people around. And if there needs to be some deep cleaning done or whatever, we need to hire some of that done. Certainly that's possible to be done, I think, in that lower attendance time of year. I did leave SIU as responsible for the lawn and the landscaping. I don't know, that again, we can change that however we think is necessary. But it used to be they ran around with a lot of lawnmowers and did a lot of that stuff on a pretty regular basis. I don't know what they do anymore, but we can, again, that's, I think, kind of a flexibility point on our part, and see what we want to do there. As far as future additions, I think we need to get an agreement with SIU that that we can add to that facility if we want to at some point. If we have enough people and they can't unreasonably withhold that, keep us from doing that. And we need to have that in the agreement, because I don't want to come back 20 years from now and you know, a different administration says, well, you know, we never agreed to that. So if we have it in the original document that they cannot unreasonably withhold that, I think that's going to be important.
Hey, Al, can I
Yes.
segue off of that for a second?
Yep.
Hey, Rick, when working with the architectural committee, can you, as we go deeper into this, make sure that the infrastructure that we would put into this design would ultimately work for a larger facility than we're initially going to pursue?
Yeah, that's what we had already, we had thought that already. So we had designed, or Chuck had designed, a 24-man house with a wing, and then the ability to go an additional wing onto that fairly easy, and that would expand it to whatever we want.
Well, going a little deeper than that, what I was kind of going was making sure that it's discussed to make sure that sewer, electricity, and those utilities that go into a 24-man house can be expanded easily to a 36 or whatever.
Yeah. Once we get with an architect and a builder, you know, figure out how that all works out, because we don't know what it's going to require to heat and do any of that at this point.
Correct. I just wanted it to be top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's top of mind.
Thank you.
Then really sort of closely wrapping up the miscellaneous items. And these are just things that I thought would be good additions, and some ideas that you guys had sent me. And solar panels, maybe not. They may not be cost effective, but I think we need to mention that that's something that we may be interested in. And again, I think this is too early to really say that, but that's definitely going to happen. I think that's going to be something that, as the architectural group goes into this, we'll see what something like that is cost-wise. We'd like to get the original blueprints of 116 if they're available. That question was asked. And Tom has talked to the SIU School of Architecture, and they've agreed to design and plan options for the new house as kind of a semester project, which I think is really pretty exciting, because you know, that may gives us some ideas that we haven't thought of till now. But certainly that's something that I think would probably at least work in our favor with the university, that we're trying to utilize some of their expertise and trying to get all this put together. The SIU School of Law, in contract formulations, you know, maybe they can formulate it. I know several of you guys, and I did not mean to exclude the fact that we would have our own attorney, because I think it's important we have our own attorney. But somebody needs to do the original drawing up of these documents. So, you know, whether it's the SI School of Law, or, you know, whether it's the SIU attorneys. I don't know, but somebody needs to start. And but at the end of the day, we need to have our own attorney, regardless. And the other suggestion was to explore LEED certification. I'm not real familiar with that, but again, I wanted to make sure that we included that.
What is it?
LEED certification, and you're not talking to an expert by any means, but LEED certification means that the house is designed to be as energy efficient as humanly possible, and there is an expense to it. It may not be it may not be economically workable for this project, but I think it's a lofty goal, and we should pursue it as we're trying to set the standard for a new building on campus.
Okay, that's helpful. The end of the day, the last part, which is a part nobody wants to talk about, but we need to include, and I think, again, if we take the lead on some of this and say, hey, here's some things that can happen, and here's how we want to try and solve those when they do happen. I think having something to start with, and recognizing that this could be the case, this is going to be in every contract anyway. So I guess we might as well start with something. I did initially just said that if the active chapter had 3 major rule violations within a 12-month period, I went on to add these next 2 statements, that if they essentially are kicked off campus, that we would, as alumni association, have 2 years to reestablish, clean house, start all over. Now, again, that would be our choice, I guess, but that would give us some time to do that. And but if that in fact happened, we would have to maintain all the payments and whatever that may be due to SIU during that time, where the house essentially would be sitting empty, so to speak.
Al,
yeah.
Alpha Gamma Rho National seems to thrive on the concept that you, if a house goes under, like Illinois State goes under, that basically they can get back on campus within 5 years. And so they feel like 5 years is the time to clean house and get new management in there and start over. So is there a way to maybe go with the best practice of 5 years?
Well, I'm fine with that. I mean, I thought we needed to have something to start with. And but also understanding that if it is 5 years, the alumni association, whatever the distant time is, the alumni association is going to have to maintain that house, and during that time. And I just wanted to make clear to the university that if we're down and it's empty, we're going to maintain that facility. And we have that they're going to at least give us that long to do that without saying, hey, goodbye. So, but I'm fine with changing that to 5 years if that's, I didn't know that about AGR, but that's certainly doable.
And then I have something else to add to this, Al. And I don't even know if this is even a scenario we should be worried about, but back in the 70s, SIU had a situation financially. They called it a financial exigency, and they fired about 100 professors to kind of rein in their cost. And it was a fancy term to basically say they were allowed to lay off tenured professors. I wondered if we needed to add something in here, and I don't know the language, but something along the lines that the agreement would remain even if SIU fell into a state of financial exigency, where they were having to cut cost, and rein in their expenses. I'm just throwing it out to the group, but it was a big deal back in the 70s. If I remember correctly, the timing, and they did get rid of about 100 to 104 professors and tenured employees.
I'm fine with that. I think that that's something, because really most of this termination is on our part, not necessarily theirs. And I think that it would be helpful if there was something on the other way. I mean, if that makes sense, so that you're right. If SIU has financial difficulties, they can't arbitrarily change our lease or kick us out or whatever.
I'd like to see something put into there as a starting point to discuss with their legal.
Okay. I'll
Question
try
for
and
you,
come up.
Al. On A2, you're saying all payments. Is that payments that signify a full house? Would we even possibly be financially able to make the payments as we would if we had a full house there? Is that even
Well,
possible?
the payments that I can see is if the house was empty to the university would be, assuming we have a lease, let's just assume we have a lease payment of $10 a year, but we're going to have to maintain utilities.
Okay.
And, we're going to have to keep the heat on and, that type of thing. So that would be the payments to the university.
Okay.
Would be
All right.
those type of things. Yep.
Unless we had a mortgage, then you'd have to cover
Right.
that as
Then,
well.
yeah, but that wouldn't be to SIU.
No, but that would be the other cost that we
Right.
might have.
That would be our other cost.
Yeah.
You're right. And B then would be if we fail to make payments to SIU for a 12-month period. I mean, this obviously, if we aren't paying them, there's no way that we're going to be able to stay there. We just need to be clear about that in the beginning. They need to understand that, which I'm sure they do, and we need to understand that. The other thing would be if we're unable to maintain sufficient active contracts in the house, if everything just goes to pieces, you can't get members. There's got to be some way to be out if alumni association is just unable to maintain a chapter. And this was Rick's suggestion, was a repurchase agreement on the house at 90% of appraised value. I mean, I don't know. Again, that's arbitrary. Whether they'll agree to that 90%, I guess we throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. And but we have to start with something. So I think it's a good starting point.
How would that work if we, maybe I'm not understanding the process here, but isn't this house going to be gifted to SIU? So technically it's their house and we're leasing it. So there's nothing to repurchase to us.
That's right. There really isn't, except that they would reimburse. They're basically going to reimburse the Alumni Association for the money that we put in to build a house. Again, I don't know whether they're going to agree to this.
Right. Okay.
But in my back of my mind, and I was trying to think about this from both sides. If I was SIU, I would say, no, I ain't going to do that. So, I don't know. But again, I guess we'll throw it on the wall and see if something sticks. And Because again, I'm sure there's going to be some give and take in all of this.
I agree with the idea there, Al. I just got concerns. SIU is getting a heck of a deal. If we raise the money to build housing and then it's gifted to SIU, that's a win-win for them. But if we end up like beta chapter of AGR, you've got a beautiful house, but you don't have the actives there to fill it, and you come up short, since we don't own the house, SIU does, and we gave all, as alumni, gave all this money to SIU for housing, we need a way out. And yeah, you got to start somewhere.
So anyway, that's kind of where I've got all of this and where it came from. And again, I tried to highlight certain areas that I know are going to be touched on in a contract. And that's not saying that there won't be additions to this or whatever. I'm fine with that, but I thought it was a place to start. Our discussion on the 10th, this is really going to be preliminary because we've never had a discussion like this before. They haven't either. And so I don't know how definitive any answers are going to be, but it's certainly going to get the ball rolling. And I think that this is probably going to lead to obviously some other meetings, discussions with legal people, yada, 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 to come up with drafts, because there are going to be multiple drafts of legal documents that, at least in my experience, sometimes you have to wade through 3 and 4 and 5 drafts until you come up with something that everybody agrees with the language and what it's trying to say and what you're trying to accomplish. So I guess don't be surprised that this isn't a one and done, because it ain't going to happen that way.
Greg is in the last conversation I had with Greg Webb, he was going to be pushing Matt and Susan for a legal representative from SIU to show at this meeting. I think I should probably follow up with Greg today to make sure that he's still going to be there and see if he has any updates on somebody from legal being there. So that's where we stand on that front. Yeah. Does anybody have any more comments about this? If not, I thought maybe we could move to the agenda that I roughly put together and see if anybody has any feedback on it.
Yeah, I've got a few comments if I might. I think there is a basic premise here of what we want that Al has laid out in this document. I think there's just a couple of places with some words. Okay, so here's my big thing. To accommodate an interest of the university, we are considering going back to small group housing to have a house. Okay. And the way I see this is that we are leasing a tract of land from them with a couple of caveats, basically water and sewer, but we're not going to dig a well. Electrical is by the power company, all those other pest control, kitchen cook, all of those things, that's our responsibility. We are taking on a more significant management position than we ever have before. In other words, the way I look at this is that we would like to place a house on your land and we're going to run it. Now, the convoluting of this thing is where the foundation has offered to raise the money. And then this technical thing, which I don't understand, about how we then have to give it back to the foundation. Now, I think there's a real technical difference here as to giving it back to the university versus giving it back to the foundation. And that's where Matt was referring to a new concept that he had in building other buildings and structures at SIU. The thing that I think is important is that we are desirous of running, maintaining, controlling, repairing, and doing everything for us, for our house. Now, so Matt comes along and says, well, what if I get $150,000 from Pioneer? Okay, you've just stepped outside the fraternity, and that puts a new wrinkle on it, in that now they are raising funds from wherever, however, whoever, to build the structure. So that kind of says to me that we're back to the old way of where university, or let's say foundation, has the house. And so now you've put all the money into this, you've raised all the money for this, we're going to lease it from you, and then we're going to sublease it to chapter members. That's what we had before. So this whole document changes completely if that is going to be Matt's premise and Matt's concept. And I kind of think it was a little bit, because I pressed that question and I don't think he gave a good answer to it. But that's why I wrote up the things for you, Al, that I did, is that I guess for just my personal and gelling then with all the discussion here, is that we need to be sure that we want this house, we want to run it, we want to take all the management and financial responsibilities for it. And the only thing we're going to pay them is $10 for having it on this piece of land. Now, there was a point in there that he said something about, well, we might have to have a little bit of payment. Well, we could establish like 5% of revenue, 10% of revenue, or something like that, that we could figure out somehow. This is where this fundraising part has really muddied the water, in my opinion, because they say they're not going to charge us anything. They're not going to get anything out of this. So why are they wanting to do this? I applaud them for it. I mean, I would like to have the relationship with the university, but we've got to really initially go in here, I think, and say we are willing to take this on, and all we want is to place it on your land with a few caveats for water, which we can't control, and sewer that we can't control, but we can control everything else. And we just got to be willing to do that and make sure that that's where we're at. We start talking about leasing with the foundation or the university. That takes some control away from us. So that's what I wanted to really, what do you call, ferret out here with our meeting today, and the outline that Alan put together and stuff like that, is to make sure that that's where we were headed with this, and not be leasing from the university.
So
Rick,
Rick, if we're a couple 100,000 short, and let's just say Bear or Pioneer or whoever would say, hey, we're willing to give some money to your cause, would we turn them down?
Well, no, but well, I would say no, but the university has got to say, well, they gave that gift, but they gave that gift like we are giving gifts to the foundation for utilizing the foundation as a charitable contribution, but for Beta Alpha. In other words, it's got to be very clear it's for Beta Alpha. When I send money to AGR, then good God, I've had 10 solicitations from them in the last 2 months. I send money to the AGR Foundation for the credit of Beta Alpha's account. And the same thing to SIU, to Beta Alpha's scholarship fund. So no, Kevin, but I think it's got to be clear there as to what they're doing. If they're just going to kick it into the general fund of SIU Foundation, well, now the foundation has to look out for all 99 other parts of the foundation as to where that money's going.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the foundation is going to make some money on this. But it won't be ongoing. And I know most foundations do this. At least my experience has been with them, is they're going to take some off the top, whatever percentage it is. And I don't remember what he said was 3%.
5%.
But they're going to, and that's where they're profiting from all of this. And they will do that as a conduit, so to speak, to get things to happen for the university, and that they're willing to do that for that. But I agree with you, if there's money given by somebody else, whether it's another company or whatever, it needs to be specifically for this project. Unless Pioneer, let's say, is going to donate 90% of the money for the project, or 55% of the money of the project. They're not going to control the project. The project, as long as we put in the bulk of the money for this, I say we as alumni, we're going to control the project in my eyes. Somebody else is not.
Okay, I think you're right, Al, but we'll need to get that clarified, because that question was asked of them, which is why we made the decision not to go with Pennington, because Pennington was going to have a cost up front right away, which, they're going to do work. But I thought Matt said that there was no cost at $1 million, that the percentage of what they would take would be in excess of a threshold. And I thought that threshold was $1 million.
My memory of the conversation with Matt was it was a 5% flat fee on every dollar raised.
No, that's not right.
Well, that was my understanding too, but then again, we just need to get clarification.
Yeah.
Let's put that in the notes for somebody to bring up on Wednesday, because that's a critical difference. How we all heard the same thing, but interpreted very differently.
Well, I think it's a good document. I just don't have the ability to, where I've been this last week, and, print things out and work with things. I did the best I could, and really appreciate everything that went into this. I think there's just a few maybe word tweaking so that we don't give the impression that we're looking to the university to lease from them. Legalities may have to have something like that in there, but that's not where I thought we were headed with this. And I see, two choices: either A, what we just went through and just presented, or B, they own the damn thing and we're leasing it from them, and they're getting money from wherever they want to get from, and they're just helping us build a house. But I like the attitude here that this is our project, our house, our fundraising, our management. And I would add to that we've been having trouble getting a couple of chapter advisors down there. We are going to have to be on top of them with finance and management and and recruiting. In other words, that's one of the things that I didn't even want to talk about. I don't even want to bring it up, but sometimes I think about this and I think we got the cart before the horse. In other words, generally people go into a building project like this because they have a need. Well, we have a need because of where our active chapter is living, but we don't have a waiting list of people waiting to get in. In other words, recruitment and having 30 men out there for a 24-man house is really the situation that you want. Because as you've already mentioned, Al, a couple of times, if we fall short here and don't have those spaces rented and filled, what are we going to do? You know, I mean, we've got to have some tremendous reserves built in to not only handle structural things and replacement things, but loss of rent. And I think in the commercial market, you generally factor in about a 15% vacancy when you're putting your budgets together.
And that's part of the reason why I put all that in the last newsletter, the statistics on how many we've had in the house over the years and the total SIU population, and see if there's any correlation, is to give us some ability to kind of look at where we're at right now, filling the house. How many are in there in the last 5 years, and is it decreasing? Is it potentially going to increase? Is there any relationship to the total number of SIU population? It didn't seem to me to be. It's more recruitment, and maybe that's related to the house. Maybe it's the chicken and the egg. You know, you don't have a good place to live, people aren't going to want to join. I don't know, but
well, you're very, very pointed there, Rick, because what has just happened that I think we're coming out of is that people gravitate towards their friends. And hey, if this is good for me, I'd like to have you with me. So come on with me. So if you don't have the ag nucleus that is driving it, you get the aviation or you get art, you know, and that's what happened to us. And that's where we got carried away. And you've got to drive it from that ag initiative. And man, I wish we had more Al Osterlands and and Roger Ashley's and a few other people that we could name. I wish we had more of those people here today. You know, attending college. They had disciplines and knowledge and management skills before they ever came to school. That's going to be critical. We're saying to ourselves, we are going to be on top of this thing all the way through. And I hope we are. I hope we can. That means recruitment too. And you got some good things going, Tom, to help stimulate that and keep it going in the right direction. I compliment all of that, but we cannot hide our face and take for granted that something's going to be happening, because those skills are not with those people today. I'll be quiet.
Let's bring up the agenda if Al, you're okay with that, and we'll go through it quickly, make sure it aligns with our statement. And first things first, Al, I need to correct the spelling on that at 10:45 to 11:15, and that will happen. My apologies.
No problem.
It's one of my focus areas is to spell people's names correctly as they were born with them. So I failed you.
20 lashes with a wet noodle.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Tom, what was your thinking of putting the outline together the way you have? I mean, I don't know that any one of us has, you know, specific expertise in what you assigned to us. it might be a little difficult. Can't you and Al and pretty much just lead us through the whole thing and use Al's document as kind of this part of the discussion? Some of the areas are going to have more time needed than other areas. I don't know, and I don't have. I will talk, you know that, but I don't need a section to present, I guess what I'm saying.
My thought process in this was to have more people in the room talk, and to make it fresh, and to keep it going. And it was carved up in 30-minute segments, and it's really hard to know whether it requires 15 minutes or 45 minutes. But I suspect when you divide 3 items into a 30-minute window, that it's reasonably close. Al suggested strongly that we have an agenda, and I kind of heeded his words and put together this rough document. So if nobody objects to it, I'd like to keep it as it is, to keep the conversation fresh and get more. I guess overall, from 30,000 feet, I wanted more decision makers in front of these folks than just Al and I.
So it'd be just more of a roundtable discussion. Each segment would be, I guess, a team leader would have that segment, and then it just open it up for discussion in that segment. Correct, Tom?
It's a very loose roundtable discussion, and get people talking, and then also it allows more people to get a read of the room from their perspective, and for them to get a read of our room. And so it's not a perfect document. It was just my idea of how to bring more people into the discussion.
I agree with Rick. Some of those areas will take more time than some of the minor ones, if you want to call them minor. So you might have to play with those times a little bit, but yeah, it's a rough guide.
It's a rough guide, and at the end of the day, we want to keep the conversation moving. We want to get Al on the road back home before 2 a.m. the following day. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you all the time, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing the best I can with the information in front of me. It looked like it worked for me, and I thought it could work for everybody else.
Well, I applaud you there, Tom, and no problem. But when I look at this, I say, okay, Rick's got to talk about housing requirements, house mother, and kitchen steward. Oh, I got to go do my homework. I got to come up with some things to talk about in this area. I don't. That's just the way it strikes me.
I want to ask.
Well,
go ahead,
Tom. Certainly, just because one of our names is plugged into a particular area doesn't mean that the rest of us can't help out at different times with additional comments and additional points or clarification or whatever it may be. I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly willing to help in any of that discussion, but I don't want to be the only guy that talks either. So
I think it'd be up to that team leader in each section just to have a few bullet points to start the discussion, then open it up. If you got 3 topics to talk about, do a little homework and have some ideas on paper, some canned questions to throw out to stimulate the conversation among everybody.
I'm sure they're going to have a lot of questions.
Go ahead, Al.
I'm sure they're going to have a lot of questions as we go through this. I mean, I just can't believe they won't.
Yeah, it's Matt or Susan or both of them. They looked at this when we met earlier. They were going to use this as a template for other fraternities, sororities, potential there in Greek Row. are we the odd duck that we have maybe a more active alumni association? If we do this, if we finance the majority of it, hopefully, would that template be valid for other fraternities and sororities? Would they be able to finance their own house as well, potentially, as what we would? Or are we going down a rocky road here? They said, well, we're going to use you as an example. Well, if our example is beyond the reach of other Greek organizations, is there a plan A and a plan B? Would plan B be that maybe the university would fund the one or two or however many Greek organizations for their houses? Yeah, okay, AGR finance their own, but would it be the same thing for all the other organizations? Are they just looking at us as a cash cow that, hey, we're going to let AGR raise the funds for this new house on Greek Row, and then maybe the other ones, SIU is going to have to fund it themselves?
You know, it's a good question, but I also think that I think the more, and I think one of the points that Rick made is the more that we control this, the more we sort of control our own destiny. If as an organization, the university ends up funding 3/4 of this, they're going to set the rules. And in some of the fraternities or sororities, they may be fine with that. You know, I don't think we are, but they might be. That, you know, that may be satisfactory. But I think if we sort of set the gold standard, then at least they have a pattern to work off of. And okay, if you can't do that, then maybe we do something else. Maybe they end up with a hodgepodge of things. I don't know what they're willing to agree to, but I think if we have the opportunity to set the pace, so to speak, let's go for it.
Okay.
I want to ask the group for their feedback, because there's something that occurred to me over the weekend that we don't have on here, and we need to hold the university and Susan and Matt to the fire. And that is, when will we see a feasibility analysis of the dollars that they think they can raise? And should that be included as a point in this agenda? Because all the work we're doing is for moot if we do not have the capability to come close to raising the money we need for this project.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, I think it be in the agenda, Tom. I don't know that it needs to be in this part, but I do think it needs to be in the agenda.
Where would you suggest it go so that we start the meeting off on a good note, but we cover that subject?
I wouldn't start with that, but I certainly would include that.
Before your wrap up.
Yeah. I mean, we need to, again, this meeting isn't going to be the last one we ever have.
It is not. This is one of many to get the fermentation of the project going. So, what do you think? What do you think about plugging it in to maybe one of the discussion points earlier in the day, but not at the end of the day, to get it asked, but not have it be one of those subjects at the end of the day where people are tired and just want to get on the road? And so put bluntly,
maybe you bring it up during the lunch.
Yeah, and it's what's coincidental here is that Rick has a working lunch.
Yeah,
Rick,
what does that mean? I'm buying.
Rick, What are your thoughts about that?
I don't care, Tom. Whatever you want to do.
I want to do it. I want to plug that in as like a item or something. Just to have it on the agenda. Because I have a feeling that unless they're pushed, they're not going to give it to us in a fast manner.
I don't know, you know, Rick is always at a loss for words, and I don't know whether, you know, he can work that into his discussion.
All right.
I'm just funning you with you, Rick.
Yes, Rick, you're the butt of our joke this morning, unfortunately. So just to let you know kind of how I see this happening, please advise if you have other ideas, is Al, I'll wait for your comments on the other sheet to be tweaked. I'll tweak this agenda, and then I will create the packets for the meeting. And in other words, print everything off and have them ready to go for Wednesday.
You're sending all this to Matt and Susan ahead of time after we get done here, right?
Yes, I was hoping to send it by noon today.
Yeah.
And if I understood you, they're going to be in Chicago like tomorrow.
Something like that. I didn't read it very well, but yeah, something like that.
Because we're supposed to get between 7 and 8 inches of snow tomorrow. So
Well, happy day.
So Al, you and I had a general conversation the other day about positioning the conversation we're having with them. Would you be willing to kind of share with the group kind of what we were talking about, you know, about doing this as to assist the university and how we want to partner with them and those kinds of things? You remember that discussion?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the discussion we had was about the long-term benefit to the university for this. And this is kind of what one of my selling points, or one I think something that we need to make sure that is clear, is that if the university is willing to cooperate with the Greek system on a positive way, then I think potentially it has long-term benefits financially for the university, because if they have a good rapport with the Greek system and the people in the Greek system and have a healthy Greek system, those people go on and later in life to have good jobs and become big donors and potentially huge donors to the university, because they're always grounded with their fraternal organizations, and it gives them, you know, reason to come back, people to see. All of those types of positive things, I think, can be real positive things for the university if they're willing to capitalize on them. And a good, strong Greek system with decent housing certainly, I think, is a good place to start. And so I don't know, that was kind of the emphasis of our discussion Tom and I had, that there's some benefits here that really haven't been discussed or thought about, and maybe they have been thought about from Matt's perspective, I don't know, but I think we need to point that out to them and make sure that they are thinking about it.
And taking Al's comment just a little further, we're dealing with a granular on a potential agreement with the university by going through this list, but it needs to be included in the conversation that we want to go beyond the granular, the minute, and we want to show the benefit of working with us in a manner like this. And so I would like to see if we can't get that into the conversation early in the day from a standpoint that we're in the details, but we want to look at this from 30,000 feet.
Just be careful how that's presented, that you don't want to blackmail.
I view it as all positive.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Kevin. Yeah, there's no blackmail. There's nothing from my end that's related to blackmail. And so it's about extenuating developing a real relationship, but pointing it out that we want to work with them and we want to help SIU win.
Yeah. You got to look at it from their point of view, put the other shoe on. And so when it's presented to them that, hey, these guys are willing to do this, but they're going to hold back money. You be very careful how you word that. Handled correctly, it's not a problem.
Al, do you think you can plug that into the conversation in your piece since you're early in the day?
Yeah, I think so.
I'd appreciate it. And you can say it. I think you can say it in a way that will meet with everybody's approval and say it in a way that gets a point across without holding them up, feel like they're being held hostage.
Yeah, and I understand what Kevin's saying too. I think it is a fine line, but we do have to let them know that we think that there's some benefit to the university in a long-term basis.
Tom, was it Pennington, this preliminary result, 10% of the alumni give sizable donations? Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So rough numbers, and anybody in the group help me out. What kind of project we looking at? 2.5 million?
I would say as a minimum.
I think based on what I've been seeing, if Chuck's calculations came in at 2 million to build that place, and then we had to have another 500,000 in overruns and furniture and all the other stuff. Kevin, I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't say it was somewhere between 2.5 and 3 mil.
So my organic calculator says that alumni would need to donate 25,000 per person. Is that correct?
How many people are you putting in that
1,000.
calculator?
Well, we've got 1,000 actives or alumni. So that'd be 100.
Well, we might have 1,000. We might have 1,000 alumni, but we only have contact information and response from maybe 300. You're looking at on an annual, on a monthly basis or quarterly basis when I do the newsletter.
So now the number's down to 30.
You get about 300. I send out about 600 and some odd newsletters, and I get response from about 50% of people that actually read them.
I'm trying to visualize the people that would give and the money we'd need, what it would actually take per active donating alumni.
Right. Right, and there's just gonna be different kinds of donations. You're gonna have people that can give money up front, and there might be some of us that would do it over a 5-year period of time, so much,
Right.
you know, you're gonna get a variety.
Yep.
And I
And
guess
that's-
that's what the feasibility study is for, is to figure out what that is.
Okay.
The other part of that, Kevin, is I think it's sort of a pipe dream to think that we're gonna get this done without having to borrow money. Because I'm certain that we are.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about that as long as it's a manageable amount. I don't want to borrow 90%, or anything ridiculous like that. But if it's manageable and workable, that's one thing. But again, that's something we're gonna have to decide before we ever turn the first shovel of dirt.
The last Omega study, or whoever it was, I guess Omega was the company, was a sub company of Pennington. I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but anyway, their feasibility study at the time was like 1.125 million, like what they thought we could raise.
Yeah, that's right. We were after 2.5. They did a feasibility study, came back and said we were 1.25. And Don Knapp made a big presentation about he wanted everybody on the fraternity on board, and we needed to find more people. We need to get more people involved. And we've got the same people involved today that we had involved back then. And we could have had the house built and done. But anyway. It's the 2080 rule. That's what it is.
All right. Anybody have anything else? If not, we'll conclude, and we'll see you in Effingham at 10:15 on Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Sounds like a plan.
I appreciate everybody's time. I thought we had great discussion, and your input is invaluable and well appreciated. Thanks for everybody for your hard work, and we'll get there hopefully.
Hey, thanks everybody. I'll get this to you, Tom.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Hey, Tom, you're going to send us the same package you're sending Susan, right?
You're going to get everything at the same time? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough. Have a great day.
Bye,
Great.
everybody.
Thanks.
See you in a couple days.
You bet. And Rick, I'm waiting to hear from Susan on the Zoom call.
Okay, all right. Yeah, just keep me posted, and then I'll get that sent out.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you. Bye.
Thanks.